Good morning, this is your Math Sensei, Mr. Spensei, and this will be going over factoring quadratics and introducing the parts of a um, parabola. So here we go. First thing it says is factor the following. So x squared minus 2x minus 8. Well, we have a t-chart, large factor, small factor. We need to know first off what a, b, and c is. A happens to be 1. B is -2. And C is -8. Well, to start off with the factors, we're going to need the factors that make up -8. So we need the factors of -8. And because this B is -2, we know the large factor will be negative. To find the factors of -8, we're going to go to y equals, and we're going to clear that out and press 8 divided by, and then we'll use the XTON button. Blue table. And we see that we have 8 and 1. Well, 8's the large one, so it goes first. And then the small one is 4 and 2. Or the next one is 4 and 2, with 4 being the larger number. And then all of a sudden, it repeats. Once it repeats, we stop, so we know we're done. Well, we know the large factor is negative. Well, to determine what the small factor is, I need to use the triangle. And the triangle says we have a negative, and so what's left? A positive, so we know the small factor is positive. So we found the factors that made up -8. Now I need to combine the two and get -2. Well, when I do that, I try, well, what's -8 plus 1? -8 plus 1, oh, that's -7. That's not correct. But if I go -4 plus 2, that gives me the -2. So these are the factors that I need right here. So this is going to be x minus 4 times x plus 2. So there we go. So we now have our factors right there. Parts of the parabola. I'm going to skip around a little bit. I'm going to start off with the vertex. The vertex is where the parabola changes directions. And we can have parabolas that are either facing up like what we have, or they could be facing down like this. But they're going to be, those will be the functions that we use. So this one's facing up. The vertex will always be either at this point or this point. So our vertex occurs right here. So this is my vertex. And it occurred at 1 and -9. Now, it wants to know whether it's the minimum or maximum. If it's shaped like this is the lowest point. Lowest makes this a minimum. All right, so this is a min. Had it been a maximum, it would have had to been the highest point and would have been had to shape like this. But this is a min because of the way it's shaped. So a vertex is minimum, and it happened at 1, -9. The next thing it asks, the line of symmetry. Well, the line of symmetry cuts it directly in half. So this is my line of symmetry. And I'm going to put line of symmetry right here. And the line of symmetry actually has a formula. It's called -b over 2a. X equals -b over 2a. But if I look at this, what does x equal? It doesn't matter where I point on the line, I get x equals 1. So that's my line of symmetry in this case. My line of symmetry is x equals 1. If I'd taken -b, that would be, oh, that would make that a +2 divided by 2 over 1, because that's what a is. It would have looked something like this. I could have done negative -2 over 2 times 1. Well, negative is a positive, but we'll do that anyway. Negative parenthesis -2 divided by 2 parenthesis 1. And we get 1. Well, guess what? That's what we got. So that's our line of symmetry. But the easiest thing is go, where does it cut the thing in half? It cuts the parabola half where x equals 1, and it'll always be x equals 1. So then we ask for the roots. Sometimes the roots are referred to as solutions. Sometimes they're referred to as zeros. And we can either have one root, two roots, or we could have no roots. So roots, solution, and zeros. So what is a root? A root is where it touches the x-axis. So in this case, it touches the x-axis at -2 and 0. So -2, 0, that's my root. And over here, it touches at +4 and 0. Now, I want to go back real quickly. These were our factors. Our factors are our roots backwards. But if I set them equal to 0, then I will get the right answer. So if I say x minus 4 equals 0, if I add 4 to both sides, I end up getting x equals 4, which is exactly what I have here. Over here, I have x plus 2. If I set it equal to 0 and subtract 2, I end up getting x equals -2, which is what I have there. Okay. We had one other thing marked on this, and this is the y-intercept. And that's where it hits the y-axis. And I see that it hits the y-axis at 0, comma, 0, comma, -8. Then it asks for the domain. Well, this keeps going this way, it has an arrow on it, so that means it's going to -infinity to +infinity. So the domain is -infinity less than x less than infinity. But we don't say that. We always say all real numbers. The range, we have a solid line, we have a solid point. So we start at -9 and we have an arrow and we're going to +infinity. So technically we have -9 is less than or equal to y. And remember, range is the y less than infinity. Well, we don't have that. And then we have to flip it. So y is greater than -9, or all real numbers greater than or equal to -9. So next thing, we need to find the factored form. Well, in this case, a equals 1, b equals a +3, and c equals -18. So I'm going to need the factors of 18. So let's do the factors of 18. So we're going to go y equals 18 divided by x, blue graph, and we get 18 and 1, 9 and 2, and 6 and 3. Because b is positive, and this is where we have to start paying attention to b, because b is positive, I know my large factor has to be positive. Okay? I also know it has to combine to make 3, but I need to figure out what my signs are. Well, in this case, I'll draw my triangle, and I have a positive and a negative, and what's left is a negative, which means these are negatives over here. So what ones give me +3? Well, 18 and 1 doesn't, 9 and 2 doesn't, but 6 and 3 does, because when I go to my calculator, 6 minus 3, oh, that's 3. That's what we wanted. So the factored form is y plus 6 times y minus 3. Now, you could have swapped the order. You could have put y minus 3 times y plus 6. That wouldn't matter. Okay, either one of those are acceptable. The next one, find the factored form of this. Now, it's missing a parenthesis right here, so I'm going to add that. And we'll notice that a equals 1, B equals 6, and this A equals a positive 1, B equals a positive 6, and C equals a negative 27. So I need the factors of C. Well, we're going to go to Y equals, and we're going to go 27 divided by X. And we get 27 and 1 and 9 and 3, and then all of a sudden we repeat. Ignore all the decimals. So 27 and 1 and 9 and 3. I look at B. B is positive. That means my large factor is positive. Once again, I go to my triangle to find out what do I need. We'll have a positive and a negative, which means the small factor is negative. I need to find the ones that add to 6 or combine to 6. Well, 27 and 1 doesn't, but 9 minus 3 does give me 6. So my factors are D plus 9 times D minus 3. Alternatively, you could have written or D minus 3 times D plus 9. And that would have also been acceptable. Either one of those is fine. You don't have to do both of them. The next one, identify A, B, and C. Well, A is positive 1, B is positive 12, and C is positive 20. So I'm going to need the factors of 20. When I look at this, I know B is positive, so that means my large factor is positive. And at this point, I can even, if I want to, go ahead and do the triangle. Well, I have two positives. If I have two positives, then both are positive. So I'm going to go find out the factors of 20. Y equals 20 divided by X, blue table, and we see 20 and 1, 10 and 2, and 5 and 4. So 20 and 1, 10 and 2, 5 and 4. I need the ones that add up to 12. Well, 20 and 1 is 21, 10 and 2, and by the way, I should have marked these as positive because they're positive. These two give me 12. So in this case, we have X plus 10 times X plus 2 or X plus 2 times X plus 10. Either one of those is fine. Over here, we have B is 1, A is 1, B is plus 5, and C is plus 6, and we need the factors of 6. When I look at B happens to be positive, which means my large factor has to be positive. Turns out in this case, both are positive. So I need the factors of 6. I go to Y equals 6 divided by the XTON, blue table, and I get 6 and 1, 3 and 2. Now, I need the two numbers that sum to give me 5. Well, 6 and 1 don't, but 3 and 2 do. So this is going to be X plus 3, because we said that these were positive, times X plus 2, or X plus 2 parentheses X plus 3. You could have written either one, and that would be perfectly acceptable. All right, moving on to the next. We have x squared minus 5x minus 14, and that kind of lights went off on Q. So we have A equals 1, B is negative 5, C is negative 14. So this is my large factor, this is my small factor. I need the numbers that make up 14. So y equals 14 divided by x, blue table, and we get 14 and 1 and 7 and 2. I look at B, and B is negative, so that means my large factor is negative. And in this case, when we draw the triangle, I have two negatives, which means my small factor is positive. Well, I have to get to negative 5, and these two numbers do it. So it's going to be x minus 7 times x plus 2. Or if you had chosen, you could have written x plus 2 times x minus 7. The next thing it says, hey, find for the roots, zeros, or solutions. Well, we kind of did that on the front, but this is x plus 2 equals 0. And then we have to do x minus 7 equals 0. Well, if I subtract 2, I get x equals negative 2. So my first 0 is negative 2 comma 0. That's where the 0 comes from. I add 7 to both sides. This drops off, and I have x equals 7. So my ordered pair is 7, 0. So my roots, or my solutions, I have two of them. It hits the axis twice, are right here. The next one, A is 1, B is negative 4, and C is negative 12. So we know we need the factors of 12. So let's do that. Y equals 12 divided by x, blue graph, and we get 12, 1, and we get 6, 2, and we get 4, 3. When I look at B, B is negative. So I need the two numbers, and if I go to my triangle, I have a negative and negative, which leaves me with a positive. So that means the small factor is positive. That gives me this. So we end up with x minus 6 times x plus 2. It says go ahead and set each factor to 0. So we have x minus 6 equals 0. And we have x plus 2 equals 0. If I add 6 to both sides, I end up with x equals 6. So 6 comma 0 is my first root, solution, or 0. I subtract 2, and I have x equals negative 2, which is negative 2, 0. All right. It says find the factors, identify the components, and label the graph. First off, let's do A, B, and C. A is 1, B is 4, C is negative 12. If I'm going to do the find the factors, or find the factors, I'm going to have to, or if I'm going to factor it, I'm going to have to find the values for 12. This will be my large factor and small factor. Oops, clear. Y equals 12 divided by x. And this is exactly the one we did before. We said that this was negative, so 12 divided by x, blue graph, and we get 12 and 1, and we get 6 and 2, and we get 4 and 3. Now in this case, our large factor happens to be positive. It's a positive 4, so this side is positive. But we have a plus and a minus, which means this side is negative, and we need it to be a positive 4. So we have x plus 6 times x minus 2. When I graph this thing, and I want to show you something about the graph, I can go to y equals, I clear this out, and I can put in x squared plus 4x. And by the way, you could have done this on Desmos. And I press graph. Okay, there's my graph. Looks like that. And I'm going to zoom out just a bit. So there you can see it. See if it'll zoom in a little bit. No, it didn't. Okay. Then on the other hand, if I put in the factored form, what happens if I do that? Y equals parenthesis x plus 6, close the parenthesis, and then put in x minus 2. And I put graph. Oh, I get the same graph. It's just written in a different way. Okay. So our vertex is this lowest point right here. So our vertex in this case, and we show it on the graph, this is my vertex. In this case, it's at -2, -16. And it's the lowest point on the graph, which makes it a minimum. All right, to be a max, it would have to be like this, but because it's like this, it's a minimum. The next thing is our line of symmetry. And line of symmetries will always be x equals some number. Well, what number does it equal? What cuts the thing right in half? Well, -2, so x equals -2. You could have also figured it out from this because it equals -b/2a, which is, in this case, -4/2 parentheses 1. Let's do that real quickly. So -4 divided by 2 parentheses 1 is -2. Our roots, now our roots could be called zeros. They could be our solutions. And they're where they cross. And this becomes, it crosses at -6, comma, 0. And by the way, if you notice, it's just a flip of our factor. Okay? And so then we also have this root. So we have a root at -6, 0. And we also have a root at three, 0. And I can set these both equal to 0. So we have x plus 6 equals 0. X minus 2 equals 0. I subtract 6 and I get x equals -6. If I add 2, I get x equals, by the way, this should not have been a 3, 0. This should have been a 2, 0. Excuse me. I need to make that correction 1, 2. And this should be a 2, 0. Our y-intercept, where does it cross the y-axis? It crosses our y-axis at 0, -12. And look, that's just C. And then finally, the domain. Well, this goes to -infinity because it has an arrow. This goes to positive infinity. So our domain is -infinity less than x less than positive infinity. Well, we don't say that. We say all real numbers. In our range, we always start at the bottom and go to wherever we're at. Well, our lowest value is -16. That's our lowest value, and it's a solid. And we have an arrow, so less than y, because remember y is the range, less than infinity, but we can't say that. We scratch that out, but we have to flip it. So y is greater than or equal to -16, and that would be our range. All real numbers greater than or equal to 16. Okay, well, I appreciate you watching, and I sure hope this helped. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.